I guess
Nope.
you,
Sure.
because we got Mr. Rao here, and I want to make sure that we talk about at least one that I know we can all talk about. So let's first talk about Legacy of You. This was a 2023 game designed by Shem Phillips. Artist was Sam Phillips and publisher was Garfield Games. This is a game in which thematically you are playing until you have 7 victories or you have lost 7 times. You are trying to fight off barbarians, meanwhile dealing with a whole rebuilding to fight a flood, and it has a story layer to it with a small little book, and we could talk to the story and story quality certainly, but the concept is that you're going to get changes with every round of the game, and it is going to look like a Sam Phillips game. It's going to have strong iconography, at least in my opinion. I think the iconography is for the most part really strong. It is going to play like a worker placement. So even though I will sometimes, as I talked about this, I think as I even talked to you about it, Ryan, I said it's got a Hadrian's Wall vibe. It's definitely different in this sense that you are worker placement, and you are going to be collecting resources to pay off, to complete cards, to continue to be able to move your ship down this canal and to escape the flooding waters. Meanwhile, you're going to be using these resources to potentially clear more spaces for more worker placement spots. You're also going to be trade your resources in to trade to get other resources back. And as you unlock more of those spots on the canal, you're going to be able to do that. Last but not least, I will note with this is the farther you unlock those, the more barbarians are going to come out on every turn, and you got to deal with the barbarians. And you can appease them or you can defeat them. But if the barbarians completely own the top of the board, you've lost. Or if the flood has completely taken over, you've lost. And it takes place, like I said, over 7 wins or 7 losses. I think my play took 10 or 11 games. What about both of you? I'm not sure where you. So you were 10.
Yeah, I was at 11.
Yeah. It's. Oh, by the way, yeah, I got to point this out too. Storage system in this box is fantastic. A very resettable experience that I can speak to actually, because I played through this game and then I said, all right, Ryan, you got to play this, reset the game and handed it to him.
Mm-hmm.
And
there's the storage.
It's so well designed that. And a good sized box. It fits everything and it's not more space than it's needed, which made me happy. So gameplay wise, I'd love to know what you guys both thought. For me, yes, it was not the most diverse experience in terms of different mechanics coming in. Like it wasn't like extreme changes, right? But it was a nice consistent feel game to game with a few new things. That's the kind of balance I think they were trying to strike with it. At least that's what it was for me. It was one where I was enjoying every single game. And when these new cards came out or these new things got introduced, and I don't want to spoil it for anybody, there's one moment where a card came out that I was like, damn it, this thing ticks me off. And it threw me off for a game and a half. But there wasn't anything that made me go, wham, wow, like blew my mind. But consistently across the board, there was enough new stuff being introduced in this that I really enjoyed it across 10 plays. I don't want to also say I don't think I solved it in any way. Not that I was looking to quote unquote solve the game. But at the same time, I definitely developed much clearer strategies by the end of the game.
Yeah.
I'll reflect a lot of that stuff. In the very beginning, it was in the very beginning where most of my losses actually occurred when I was actually trying to learn and play through the game, trying to realize exactly what was going on. So like my campaign is that I lost my first two games right away. And once I kind of figured out, I was like, okay, I think I need to go this route in my strategy. As soon as I flipped that switch and I started doing this one particular thing, every single game I was starting to win more than I was losing. I still lost a couple just because a couple, I think in the end, it was a particular, some of those other games were just particularly just, I think, just really bad setup at the very original like barbarian state that got introduced, and it was very hard to recover from the early game in some of those games. But rather, my strategy ended up being pretty solid, and I don't know if I start a brand new campaign with all of that in mind, I don't know how many times I'm going to lose per se, type thing.
Yeah, I ran into the same exact thing. My losses were all in the beginning, and upon finding a specific strategy and just sticking with it, I won every single game to the end. And that, it was more like the discovery of that. And I don't know, honestly, if I have interest to play the campaign again, other than to see if I will get to the same result with fewer losses. Do you know what I mean? Because there's only seven. Yeah. The game ends when you either get 7 victories or 7 losses.
Yeah.
I will give it this. I really like the fail forward kind of approach to this. It doesn't matter if you win or lose. You always move on to the next stage. If you lose, they're going to give you something that's going to benefit you. If you win, they're just going to give you something that hinders you. And that's just that's every single time. I'm doing my best to not include any spoilers.
Yeah.
But there's a big book, not a big book. There's like a book that is going to kind of go through. Yeah, there is the story book. Now that story book correlates to different cards that whenever you defeat one, sometimes if it has a story card on it, it will, you read that chapter, that area in the book, and it's effectively like longer flavor text with just whatever it tells you to do. The writing I don't think is great at all, to be perfectly honest. I kind of just like, okay, there. This is what we're doing. This is what we're doing. Okay, cool. Next, and then so it's more so like, take a card from this deck and now you add it to this one. It's not really like changing the game. The game really didn't change. And I felt like towards the end, I was a little bit an autopilot with just that same strategy. Regardless of what cards were coming out and what situations, what resources I had. Overall, it's kind of the same strategy. But I did enjoy, in particular, the mechanic of the river getting flooding you out, because the whole point, the objective every single game is you need to build the canal, which is that middle river kind of thing, and that boat is the next step of the canal you need to build. So you spend those resources to build that canal, so when the wave moves forward, it has a spot to move forward onto, because if it doesn't and it hits your boat, then you get flooded. So what's cool about that is that the flood only moves forward anytime you need to reshuffle your deck of cards. Yep. So whenever you reshuffle your deck, that river flood thing is going to move forward. So you have control over that to some degree. You can kind of plan it out, like, okay, I don't need to rush building this because I'm not going to get hit with the flood. Because the other challenge is that anytime you build areas for the flood, you're going to increase the awareness of the barbarians, and it's going to more and more going to be coming in and taking out your market up above. So there is a balance that you're always playing with. And I did like that because it made the game tight. It never overstayed its welcome in this game. It felt very tight throughout every play of it.
Mhm.
Yeah, I agree. I felt like there was a nice balance with that. I did feel a little bit what you felt at the end, what you've talked about too. I feel like, by the end, I kind of figured out what I wanted to do to some extent. And I felt a lot more confident at the end. It didn't, I don't want to say it ruined my experience because I think I thoroughly enjoyed the playthrough and it didn't take too long nor too short. The replayability is something I'm going to test and I'm going to try this again. Certainly, but I enjoyed the overall playthrough. I enjoyed the experience. And I think if you don't normally solo or like maybe solo games are newer to you and you like worker placement, other pieces, that style of gameplay, I should say, I think this can be a really good way to experience that because it doesn't do that drastic change. Now, there's something, and I think we've talked about this, Ryan. I think this grew from some great idea. It felt like it grew from some great ideas with Hadrian's Wall. And I agree with something that I think you've said to me. So I don't want to speak for you, but I feel like, man, I personally would love to see where it could go from here. Because I really felt this was a strong system. And I want to see more of this style because I really liked it. Even if at the end, maybe it felt a little more samey than I would have liked, it still was fun for me. If it had stretched out 4 or 5 more plays, it would have been too long. But it didn't. It ended at a good point for me.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of the design choices for this game felt a little safe, because I had such control with the deck and kind of understanding, okay, I'm able to generate these resources and focus on these specific kinds of things. I should be okay. And the other thing too, it felt very, I'm just trading things for trading things for trading things for trading things, and that's very similar. I mean, I get that impression with a lot of Garfield games I've played. I take resources to trade them to other resources that I get to trade them for these resources that I get. And this one for sure does that in spades. But again, because of how tight it is with the river, that part, and how it doesn't drag on too long, as opposed to some other Garfield games I've played. I feel like this handles that very well. Like the pacing is good. I just wish it took some risks. You know what I mean? Like you have this awesome book that I felt like was completely underutilized with just flavor text, and you add in some small things. That was my impression at least. But
Nope, 100%. When you said it feels like they played it safe, that's how I will play it as well. They had a lot of room to and I know what Chris is saying here too. Whereas it's like, yeah, keep the experience game to game, quote unquote, same-ish. Like, don't let's not overload the user with something completely like out of the woods. But that's kind of like what I wanted. Like I wanted if I do this, if I defeat this barbarian and he's got a story thing on him, I want something super drastic to happen now.
Yeah. It never did.
And it wasn't like drastic. Like there was one moment I was like, well, that was annoying.
Yeah.
but it wasn't like drastic. I'm like, oh, or it didn't provide me with an experience where I'm like, oh, yeah, that was cool.
Yeah.
Like it didn't provide me with a wow factor.
Right. And there's so many other legacy kind of games and campaigny kind of games that have taken me to that level, So I see this in comparison to like Undaunted Stalingrad that we've been playing a bunch. And the level that game is going is insane. And seeing how this game is going, and it's adding legacy kind of mechanics, but it kind of feels like no matter what direction you're gonna go, it still feels kind of on the rails. I still don't feel like I have a lot of. There's not a lot of twists and turns. It's very much like, yeah, okay, I guess that's what we do.
I like and like you said, I like that fail forward system. Like that's great. That's great. And what you get as either your bonus or your deficit is going to be random depending on how you shuffled up that deck of cards. I want to know what my next playthrough, because I felt like one of my early losses gave me a bonus, and I felt like that bonus, like getting it so early in the game, was tremendous in my strategy. I wonder
if we have the same bonus.
Okay, because I thought, I was like, compared to some of the other bonuses that you would get from losing, like I looked through the deck. I had to at the very end because let's just see I'm like,
I did too.
That one felt like it was the strongest, and I got it very early.
Yeah, I had a very early strong bonus that lasted me the entire game, and a lot of my choices for what cards to play and what to get focused on that one bonus I had. So I wonder if I just was lucky to get that bonus in my first game next time and just play with that bonus.
I'd be interested, by the way, in coming back, as in particular you, Mr. Out, and just like, because I'm going to play through it one more time and see where we're at and what we're thinking. Because with all this said, I did really like this game, and I like a lot of what it brought to the table. I think you're right. I think, again, I think calling decision making safe is probably the right word. But I think in my opinion, it opens the door for more of this. This still felt different and unique in its own right.
Oh yeah,
in what they did with this game, and I want more of it. I think that's my biggest takeaway from all of this. As you're hearing me talk about this, I want more of this, and I'm going to see where it can go, because it felt different than anything I had played, and it played in 30 to 45 minutes for me, depending on the game. So it wasn't like it was a big, and I could just easily put it away.
Oh yeah, the setup and teardown is great.
Yeah. So like it was, again, overall definitely an experience I very much enjoyed. Oh my goodness.
Oh yeah, it was very much that way, Brian. It was just like, okay.
I don't want to put it away, because if it's for me, they took the safe design approach. For me, I'm taking the safe gameplay approach. I'm gonna abuse that power as much as I possibly can.
Yeah.
And like I said, like I think you said, for you used it for the entire game. I used mine for the entire game as well. So I'm thinking we're thinking of the same thing.
Oh, the same one.
We're gonna have to check after, once we go off air. So let me put the question to you. I mean, look, obviously for me, visually it looked great. I think mechanically sound. And the big thing that I want to hit on is something you said, Ryan, which is it does feel tight.
Yeah.
Even if it felt, to your point, because that balance though of the barbarians versus the canal.
And I did like that too.
From a score perspective, very interested. We'll start at the top here. If Mr. F, you got to give this on a scale of a 1 to a 10, where does this fall for you?
You can do points too.
Yeah, you could point it. You could do an 8.4,
Yeah.
8.5, 8.6.
Yeah. So like I'm coming at it too, that this was my second favorite gaming experience of 2023. I spouted that off my channel. I still really, really enjoyed it. For me, it's still going to be that replayability factor after the fact. And the fact that if I do play it again, knowing that I did have a strat, am I going to try? I feel like I don't want to try something, and that speaks volumes to me, because I'm always the guy like, okay, that worked that last game, I'm going to try something different this game. This one felt like, for me, I didn't want to do that, because I wanted to get those 7 victories, and that I want to try to get that as early as possible. I'm still gonna give this like a solid, like I'm not going to put it as high as an 8, but it's definitely better than a 7.5. So I'm going to give it like a 7.7, 7.8 type thing for me. And I'm also interested because we didn't really talk about like the different types of buildings that you can build across this. Like there's the one that gives you, there's the ones that they're the kind of like the orangish ones. They kind of give you like some sort of income at the beginning of every round. Then there's like the purple ones that give you like the flexibility in the workers, allowing workers to be substituted for other workers. And then there was the huts that allows you to give extra abilities to tuck cards underneath your board for income, also giving you an extra worker placement spot to give you some sort of bonus. Did you rely on one or the other in your gameplays? Because I found myself always utilizing the purple huts.
The purple huts were crucial.
Getting that flexibility in the colors. But then I didn't really use any of the orange ones.
At all. The thing is, the purple ones for sure, because at least the white workers can be used as one of the army workers, which is always nice. And then your army workers can be used as standard workers, which is, again, always nice. So purple for sure was the biggest one. And then, honestly, I didn't mix them up as much as I could. And part of the excitement was having spots to kind of, take those green buildings off and have spots to tuck. And there's a balance, right? Because in this kind of game, I want to control that deck. So I want that deck to be really big as possible until I feel really confident. So I'm not tucking as much as I'd like to. So I did focus probably on the orange and the green as much in priority, but the purple one was the highest priority.
Mm-hmm. I will say I did a lot of I went heavy with tucking at one point because I love that mechanic as a whole. But I did always want to get as many of those worker options. So played
tucking, by the way, gives you different benefits at the start of your turn. At the start of your turn, you collect number of resources during the harvest phase, and these are giving you additional resources to gather. So I did like it. I felt like it did sour towards the end. If I didn't finish it, I think I would have gave it a higher rating, to be honest. So I'm coming in with a 7.4 on this one because I still did enjoy it, and I would recommend it if you like this sort of game, a quick to set up, a tight kind of solo game. But again, I feel like a lot of parts were just lacking, and I wish I want to see the next legacy of you.
I'm gonna throw this out there. I'm gonna give it an 8, but it's an 8 because on a replay I might end up needing to drop it because I want to see what that experience is the second time around, and it falls in that 7.8 to 8.0 range, and I'm gonna bump it up to an 8 just because I'll be honest, it was a really good experience that did not overstay its welcome for me. Again, had I played this 3 or 4 more, had it had me take me 3 or 4 more times and it been very same as, I probably would have felt differently, but it's a solid 8 for me. I think overall I agree with you, Ryan. I think if you like this style game, this is very much the style I like. But I want to see where it goes. So I think this opens a door, and I really hope they take it.
And honestly, I feel like it's so apparent because we've been playing 2023. I think has been a fantastic year for solo gaming, and there's been so many solo games that I felt like are pushing this envelope, and Legacy of You could have, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
I agree with that.
Yeah, so everybody, that would be our thoughts on Legacy of You. By the way, this was a copy I purchased. This was not a review copy of any kind that Ryan and myself played. And Mr. I believe you bought your copy as well, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
Like to clarify that.